Welcome to Young Voices Changing the Currents. I'm your host, Haley Platt. My goal is to create a safe space that inspires students to share, inspire, and shape their futures together. Special thank you to our sponsors, Siembra Mobile. Thank you for listening today and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's dive right in. Hi, welcome to Young Voices Changing the Currents podcast. My name is Haley Platt and I am your host. Today, I'm so thrilled and honored to have my guest today, Dr. Joseph Lement Brown. He is the Assistant Dean of Inclusion, Outreach, and Recruitment at Stanford University's School of Humanities and Science. He's also a colleague of mine at Siembra. Siembra is an edtech startup that I am a part of and Joseph is a part of. He was involved in the early research that got our company started with Dr. Jeff Cohen, and they basically focused on how mobile interventions can help a student's academic performance and attendance. So I'm thrilled to have him on, and I know we're going to have such great advice to give today for younger students and learn more about his past and what work he's doing now. So welcome, Joseph.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Great to be here with you too. So let's dive right in. I'm really excited for Joseph to share his story today. It's so inspiring, and I know that it'll help a lot of students that are maybe just starting out in their college journey and unsure of their path. So let's dive right in. If you want to share a bit about yourself and how you ended up in your current position.
Boy, yeah, so some twists and turns. So I am a first generation Army brat who grew up for the most part in San Antonio, Texas. Although, my father spent 25, 26 years in the Army. So the whole family did a couple of tours in Okinawa, Japan. So a little bit of traveling. Um, but, boy, so I first went to college in Texas, majored in physics, then went to grad school in bioengineering. And, I liked science and I liked engineering. But the thing is, once I got into a graduate program in bioengineering, I actually didn't like it all that much. So I left with a master's degree and was working for IBM in Boston. But, I spent a lot of time thinking about my experiences being Black and first gen in these more and more rarefied academic settings, where most of the time, I was the only person of color and one of few first gen or low income students. And boy, after bioengineering grad school, I started thinking more and more about what that experience was like and how challenging it was. And um, I started realizing that I really wanted to look more into that experience and how it affects people because I wanted to see if I could understand it better and develop solutions, make it better for people who are going to be stepping into those spaces after me. And, I talked with a lot of people. Boston's wonderful because if you throw a rock in the
Yes,
air,
Boston.
let's say if you throw a rock in the air, it's going to hit some college or university. I
Right.
talked to lots of people to figure out if I wanted to study this, if I wanted to study, for example, how stereotypes affect minorities and women, first gen low income students, how it might affect their academic journey. I got a lot of suggestions, but people were kind of directing me towards social psychology. And there was this moment that a person gave me two papers in social psychology. They heard what I wanted to study and said, okay, here are two papers to read. You need to go get a PhD in social psychology, read these two papers, and then get back to me. And I read those papers, never looked back. I started taking a couple of psychology classes at night at UMass Boston. And some of that same research that got me excited about graduate school in psychology gave me some tips for changing the way I prepared for high stakes exams like the GRE. The GRE is the graduate version of the SAT or the ACT. It's the test that you would take to be admitted to graduate programs.
Right.
And by the way, we may come back to this. I was someone, I was a bookworm. I read lots of books, in high school, I probably read about a book a day. That's how, you
Wow.
know, uh, But when it came to standardized exams, I didn't do particularly well. And when I decided that I had to go to graduate school in social psychology, I wanted to get into the best programs in the country, and I knew I had to do better on those high stakes exams. And some of the research that got me excited about graduate school gave me some new ways to think about my own intelligence and how to prepare for those kinds of exams. And long story short, it worked. I got really, really great scores on the GRE the second time.
That's great.
Got into all the psychology programs I applied to, ended up getting my PhD at Stanford. And so now I'm at Stanford and have been for over 20 years. I'm Assistant Dean of Inclusion, Outreach and Recruitment for the School of Humanities and Sciences. And what I focus on is getting more students who have identities not necessarily well represented at places like Stanford. How do I get more of them to apply and to come to Stanford? And I think about what we can do to make sure they have a great experience, to make sure that they thrive. So it's really rewarding, and I get a chance to almost every day use the research that I'm familiar with to make things better for students.
Right. That's amazing. I think it's so important that you had so much personal inspiration that you're taking with you every single day. And you just really can connect with the students and make them feel, I'm sure you make them feel very seen, and
Absolutely.
very heard. So, but let's talk more about that. Was there any moment where you felt unsure of your place or abilities as a student, where someone maybe similar position to you, family member, where they came and, kind of gave you that extra push?
Boy, so that feeling of sort of not feeling like it didn't quite fit, like it didn't quite belong, that frankly is a ubiquitous experience for me. It's hard for me to think of times when I didn't feel that way. I felt that way at Stanford. I felt that way at Brown in engineering grad school. I felt that way at my undergrad institution in high school too. And I'm the oldest of four and a first generation college student, and I didn't have anyone in my family that I could look to talk to about what I was feeling, what I was experiencing. And so that feeling of not fitting is very familiar to me. There were things that I came up with, and I can talk about them later, a couple of key things that have made a difference for me. But that feeling of not belonging, it's something that is very familiar to me. As a social psychologist, though, this is one of the reasons I love social psychology, because one of the things that we're trained to do is, when we're looking at someone who's experiencing some dilemma, instead of simply looking at what's inside them, we're kind of trained to start looking at the environment and ask,
Yeah.
okay, are there aspects of the environment that are contributing to what this person is feeling? And if we can tweak those aspects of the environment, will it change their experience for the better? So now I'm really attuned to looking there. But when I was moving through all of this, it was hard to take that perspective.
Yeah, I think it's real. I mean, I'm fascinated by this, so we could talk about this forever. But I think that just kind of understanding, I was a design thinking pathway at Santa Clara,
Oh,
and
right,
just
right.
kind of looking at social entrepreneurship and how in the paradigm shift of how we look at a problem, you're reading certain cases and you're like, how did we not think about this before? It's almost like the problem's right in front of you. Why were we trying to do a million things to get, like, we're going all the way around when we could have just gone straight through? So
Absolutely.
it's really interesting to see. And it's great that you understand how external factors can make a huge difference on a student's experience, and it's not necessarily all down to how they're feeling by
Ab-
themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it does create this opportunity potentially that you can really radically change a person's experience by tweaking small aspects of the environment that wouldn't necessarily get much attention from folks. So I think it's a really hopeful way of thinking about uh, helping people to thrive, that it's not something that's impossible to do. It's not going to take a gazillion in terms of resources necessarily. Um, what it takes is you're being thoughtful and engaging with people to understand what they're experiencing and to understand the environment that they're in and sometimes relatively subtle aspects of that environment. The the thing that drew me to graduate school was, in particular, was the stereotypes that face, in particular, minorities and women in academic settings. The stereotype that uh, uh, people of color are less intelligent. The stereotype that women are have biological limits in terms of their math ability. I had this intuition from my own experiences that those kinds of stereotypes placed an extra burden on the shoulders of women and minorities. And by the way, there's similar stereotypes and representations facing first-gen low-income students too. And it's not as if those stereotypes are often explicitly brought up, but my sense was that, but it's a part of the environment. And when you're in the environment, you know that, boy, if you mess up, if you make a mistake, that someone might use that stereotype to judge you and evaluate you. And that possibility can be really threatening enough to interfere with your ability to do well, especially in an area that you care about. And so that's what really drew me in, and the possibility that you could take those environments and do things that make those stereotypes less relevant was something that I was really interested in.
Yeah, that's when you just said something that when you're in a space about something you really care about, it just brought up for me, you're being your most vulnerable self of this is what I'm interested in and this is what I'm passionate about. And if there's a moment where you feel like you can't do that or participate, you can be closed off or just give up altogether.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotions that come with that. So
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And the truth is there are lots of people who, listening to what you just said, would simply dismiss what you said, and the next words out of their mouth would be, "Oh, just stifle that, just ignore that, don't worry about that." And I think uh, when people say that, what they're missing is that if this is something that you care about, then the possibility of being negatively stereotyped, judged, and evaluated is really disturbing, and it's going to take a lot of your attentional, cognitive, and emotional resources to ignore it. And those are resources that you could be directing to, focusing on your studies, focusing on that test, focusing on that problem set. So I think what people miss is, well, if I have to deal with this burden of being negatively stereotyped, I have to devote resources that other people are able to devote to their studies, right? Their academic performance. So I don't think people sufficiently appreciate that.
yeah, I think especially in today's, I want to dive a little bit more into this, but in today's college landscape that's shifting a bit, we're seeing people not necessarily graduating from high school and going directly to college. You're seeing a wide range of students and a wide range of paths that are leading to, post secondary jobs, but also different interests. How do you think that the shifts in everyone's experience has an impact on us psychologically?
Well, yeah, that's a lot. I guess here's the things that I guess what I would say sort of quickly. I think it matters that college is a lot more expensive than it used to be.
Mhm.
And it makes sense for a high school student and their family to kind of wonder, you know, given how much debt you're going to be carrying, we're going to be carrying, is this worth it? I mean, is
Yeah.
the kind of job you're going to get going to make all this worth it financially? I mean, I think that's a reasonable question. So I think there's that. So that's one piece. I also think that if you're first gen, low income, if you're part of a minoritized community, there are still questions in our academic environments about whether you're college material.
Mhm.
And I think about all the students who actually could be college material, but by the time they get to their junior year, senior year in high school, they've already started to change the way they see themselves so that they're
Right.
no longer seeing themselves as college material. So I think that's still happening. And I don't think high schools are doing a good enough job of communicating with students and letting them know, no, you are. Stay engaged. Don't make huge assumptions about who you're likely to be in 2 or 3 or 4 or 4 years. So I think that's an issue too. I guess the last thing I'll say is that college itself is this interesting cultural construct. And I think it's really easy for us to forget that for most of the time that the United States has been in existence, college was for a certain stream of white upper income men. And college having, you know, being more diverse is still a relatively new thing.
Mhm.
And so I think colleges and universities still struggle with that legacy and with, hey, how do we create spaces where everyone thrives, no matter who they are, no matter where they are from, right? In terms of race, gender, socioeconomic status. And I think we're starting to discover some answers, but the truth is we're still struggling with that legacy. And so I think that's part of the challenge that we're dealing with right now.
Thank you so much for being on today. It's been so lovely talking to you and to our viewers. Thank you so much for being here. I know your
My
time is
pleasure.
valuable. Yes, it's been so nice. And please, everyone, just so you know, we're going to have definitely more episodes with Dr. Brown on. So I'd love to have you tune in. Thank you so much for being on today. Thank you to our viewers. I know your time is valuable. And of course, so like and subscribe so you never miss the next episode. And have a good day.